Hey, welcome to the final Wisecrack Live of the year. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be with you in a few minutes. Hello again, Henry here, just saying thanks for joining us. We'll be with you shortly. -8 degree freedom units. Wow, it is 40 degrees in Texas right now for me. Nice to see everybody saying happy birthday to Michael there in the chat. We're having some slight video difficulties, but we'll be starting in just a moment. Thanks for being here. I agree, we do need to talk about Barbarian today.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Wisecrack Live. It's December 22nd, 2023. It's our last stream of the calendar year. It's Michael Burns. I'm here with producer Henry. Thank you for the happy birthday wishes. And Christopher's was on the 18th. I think Christopher, that means you're a Sagittarius and I'm a Capricorn. So
Ooh, happy
but hey
birthday,
everyone.
both of you.
Yeah, happy birthday to everyone who's had a birthday recently. And also, stay warm. I see people in the chat already talking about how cold it is where they live. I hear it's very cold in many parts of the country right now. So I'm sorry. Henry, is it cold where you are?
It's colder than usual, but it's not freezing.
Yeah, I know you don't live in a historically cold place, but I know it can get cold there sometimes.
Yes, we did have a freeze about 2 nights ago.
Whew. Okay. Well, hopefully everyone stays cool. So today, a very big show, not only the last show of the year, we're having my buddy Raymond Creamer on. You probably know him, friends, as the former host of Show Me the Meaning, the Wisecrack movie podcast, who has since gone on to start a new podcast with Austin Hayden, Cinemathology. So I'm sure some of you listen to that. And if you don't listen to it, hopefully you already do. Dave Logan says Jesus was a Capricorn who ate organic food. I'm pretty Christ-like. Mr. Navidad is the 25th, birthday-wise. That's awesome. That's crazy to have the birthday on Christmas. But yeah, we're doing it freezing in Baton Rouge for Cass B. There you go. My mom was in Florida and she said it's going to be very, very cold, which is weird. Oh, thank you, Mark. But we're going to talk about movies with Raymond. He's a really good person to talk about movies with. I'm borderline intimidated to talk about movies with him because he's really smart about them. He's a smart guy in general, very smart about movies. Someone that he thinks about movies. He writes about movies. He writes movies. So we're very excited to talk to him about that. We're going to do our top 10 list. I know Henry has some movies he's going to want to talk about as well. I know that in the chat you'll have stuff that you want to talk about. So, let's get ready for some movie chat today. But let's see. Okay, but before we really get into it, we got to talk about other stuff. Since we were last together, we put out a video on right-wing comedy. Man, the comments for that one have been a bit of a shit show. So, hopefully you watched that. If you didn't watch it, if you did, feel free to let us know if you have thoughts or questions. I feel like a lot of the reaction to that was a classic people reacting to title and thumbnail and not reacting to the argument of the video. Whoa, Gypsy passed her thesis defense 2 days ago. Shout out. That's awesome. That's very, very cool. Everyone give props to Gypsy. Minimum revisions. That's awesome. But yeah, so we put out the right wing comedy video. A cool thing about that is in that video, I still have this book really close to me, so I'll pull it out. In that video, oh no, I'm dropping things. Fuck my life. In that video, we talked about this book by these guys, Matt Senkowitz and Nick Marks, and I've since connected with them via Twitter. So they're going to come on the stream next year. So that's pretty fun. We're going to have a Marks on the stream, not Karl Marx, Nick Marks. But they're both professors who write about comedy and things like that. So excited to have them on the stream next year. We got some other good stuff planned as well. The other video that's come out since we've last talked, we did a Christmas video on the Grinch. It's kind of just a fun one. We just kind of did it for funsies because we wanted to, leave everyone with something for the holiday season. It ends up talking about consumerism, religion, things of that nature. It has some really fun editing in it, and there's some weird stuff in it. I did talk too much in that video over some of the clips, and people were a little annoyed about that. But I will say one of the reasons for that is copyright, guys. Copyright laws are real. So, that's this holiday season. Remember, the copyright laws are real. Um, yeah, and reminder as well that we're taking a bit of a video break in Wisecrack. So this will be the last stream until the first week of January, and then our next video will be coming out on, I think the second is a Monday. So we'll have some stuff coming out then. What do you have coming down the line? Let's see. A video on Ticketmaster coming out. So that'll be one of the first things we get in the new year about why Ticketmaster is good and they're our favorite company, and we think everything they do is moral and just. So you have that coming at you, and then a video on something else that I can't remember right now. I've been sick this week, so my brain is a little bit at half speed. So if I say anything stupid today on this stream, just note that it's not my fault. It is the cold or flu virus coursing through my veins. Nothing like being sick on your birthday, especially as you get older as well. It's like God telling you, like, this is it from here on out. This is what's going on. Um, Last thing I'll talk about before we get Raymond on and just really dive into it. As you all know, we have a Patreon. You can join it if you want. You know this by now. The only thing I'm going to do work wise between now and the new year is get some stuff up on Patreon. So you have that coming for you. But if you join our Patreon, you know what you get. You get videos early with no ads. You get some extra audio and video content. We're going to get on that a lot heavier in the new year. So if you want to support us, feel free to do that. Also, feel free to get a membership to the channel. If you notice people with green usernames in the chat, they're members. They get emotes. They get special access. Whoa! Other birthdays today include Megan Trainor, Ray Fiennes, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and Hector Elizondo. That's fun. Oh, and as Cass B says, like the stream, it's a useful and important thing to do when you like the stream. Henry, any other perfunctory remarks we should make before getting Raymond down here?
Nope, I have Raymond here in the room, so we can go ahead and have him chatting with us anytime.
Cool, Raymond. Feel free to jump in whenever, and we can just clunkily transition if you want to turn your video and audio and all the stuff on, and then everyone gets to see and hear you.
Can you see and hear me?
Yay! He's there. Everyone, if you're in the chat right now, I'm curious. Let us know who are all the who were the Show Me the Meaning listeners, who are the Cinemythology listeners. I want you to know. Cass B says, "Is Michael going to tell us how old he is?" No, I am not.
Yeah, Michael, I didn't know it was your birthday. Happy birthday, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I just wanted to trick you into spending it with me, Raymond. So
hey, no trickery necessary. It's always a pleasure to be on the mic with you.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, Raymond Kramer's here. You probably know who he is. If you don't know who he is, host of Cinemythology, was the host of Show Me the Meaning, a screenwriter, a man about town. I think officially the tallest person who's ever been featured on Wisecrack content. We've had a discussion about this before, Raymond, and we think that you're the tallest person who's ever been featured on anything. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really excited to get the Wisecrack play button in the mail for tallest person on the stream.
We're excited about that. I'll say this: Cass B asked in the chat how old I was, and I said I wouldn't tell, and then she guessed exactly right. So there you go, Cass. I'm happy with that. We're getting some love for Raymond in the chat. Ryan says, "Is Cinemythology on YouTube or just podcast apps?" I think it's just podcast apps, right?
It's only on podcast apps, but I get all these emails. I'm not 100% sure how many of them are from real people, but I get all these emails to the show's email address that are like, if you are not on YouTube, you are leaving money on the table, or whatever spam bots say.
Yeah.
So I have actually been considering putting them on YouTube, and it seems to me like maybe some folks would like to listen there. this is my first time kind of producing and running a podcast myself. So every month or so, I get an email from someone that's like, "Oh, can you put it on Good Pods? Could you put it on YouTube? Could you put it on such and such?" So maybe I'll look
Yeah.
into that in the new year.
I still get some of those horrible emails because of my email address. I still get forwarded emails from Culture Binge and stuff comes through. It's like, hey, grow your podcast by doing this. And sometimes they'll write, and it's like the bot ones, and they'll say things like, huge fan of what you're doing on the podcast. And I just want to write back and be like, you dumb fuck. We don't even do it anymore.
Yeah, well, I know that it's bullshit when anyone says like huge fan of what you're doing on the podcast, and that's just because I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
But Culture Binge was like, that was a podcast for the ages. I was just thinking about Culture Binge the other day, and what a blast that I had being able to guest on that a few times with you and Serby.
That was very fun towards the end. The end days are always fun. It's like in a relationship when you know it's going to end, and then it makes you enjoy the last weeks of the relationship before it ends. I don't know if that's real. It's just a thing that I decided to say, but I think that's a real thing.
I can see that. You kind of throw caution to the wind and you podcast like you're dying.
Yeah. What's up, everyone in the chat? You're getting a lot of love for the artwork behind you.
Oh, thanks. That's all done by this really excellent artist. His name is Xavier Ortiz.
Oh, hell yeah.
And he frequents like horror conventions and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend checking him out. He's a really talented guy.
Awesome. Well, let's start to get into this. We're going to talk about the movies, the pictures, whatever Steven Spielberg considers them to be these days. Let's start out with this. How did you think 2022 was as a year at the pictures overall?
A year at the pictures. Well, this is kind of a problem that I had getting ready for this episode, is that I had to do a lot of cramming for the test, so to speak, because I actually
I didn't even finish my cramming, so you're probably ahead of me.
Yeah. I was directing a movie for most of this year and just working on that. Like I was really honored to have that privilege, but like the worst part of making movies is that you don't get to watch as many. So I literally, this year, to answer your question, this year was like a cavalcade of my favorite filmmakers just releasing movies one after the other. Like David Cronenberg had a movie this year. Kelly Reichardt had a movie playing in festivals that I don't think is available to watch anywhere yet. Guillermo del Toro was very active on Netflix with a series and his Pinocchio adaptation. Just tons of filmmakers whom I really admire. Park Chan-wook, I just caught up with Decision to Leave this morning. It was the last movie I watched before jumping on the mic.
What a morning!
Yeah. So there are all these incredible filmmakers who were churning stuff out that I was really, really eager to see, and I just couldn't make it to the theater because I was busy lockdown producing stuff and doing whatever. But this last few weeks, I've kind of been trying to catch back up, and it really is, I think. I don't want to say a banner year for movies because I think maybe it just feels a whole lot better after missing a year in theaters when they were closed down from COVID, and now a lot of folks, in addition to new movies coming out, there are a lot of older titles that were held back when theaters were shut down. So it really just does kind of seem like an embarrassment of riches sort of coming at us all at once.
Yeah, no disagreement there. And thanks to Hassan Harris in the chat for throwing down some money in a celebratory manner. That's very sweet of you. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I agree with that. I think I did annoyingly fall ill in the past week. So things I caught up on were things I could access digitally. There was a couple things that are in theaters that I really wanted to catch that I just felt like being responsible and not going to the movies with a cold, even with a mask on. I just don't want to be that guy. But it was a very fun year at the movies. A lot of very fun things came out. The only thing I think I'd say that maybe differs from what you said, I felt like it was a year with like a small but really good top end, and that there's like 4, 5, 6, however many movies that were very easy to think of as like these were the awesome movies this year. And there was a lot of movies in the middle, a lot of movies that I really enjoyed, that I liked, but that I don't think 5 years from now we're going to look back on and think that was that writer or director's best work.
I would basically agree with you. One thing I was going to say was that, like, I kind of, like I said, I kind of hesitated to call it like a banner year because even though I think a lot of great filmmakers released really good work and consummate work, I
Yeah.
don't think anything that I've watched so far has been like, oh, this is the movie from that
Yeah.
filmmaker. Except for maybe like Todd Fields, but
Mhm.
he's only ever directed what, 3 movies. So
Yeah, so it wasn't
it's
hard
one of
for him.
those. Yeah, so
No.
it's just one of those things that like I kind of feel what you're saying on that, with a few exceptions that maybe we'll get into as we start counting down our top 10 of the year.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those years of just like a bunch of really solid movies, but you're right. There, when I was making my list, it was like, oh, these are 10 movies I really enjoyed, but I don't really know how to rank them 100% because none of them gave
Yeah.
me that feeling of like, oh, this is the best.
Yeah, I think for me, I felt like I had like basically like a top 3 and then 7 movies I liked a lot or something like
Yeah,
that.
right.
So one question, and feel free to jump on this one as well, Henry. Any movies before we get into it? I'm curious, and in the chat as well, if you have these, are there movies that I guess aggressively underwhelmed this year? Movies that you were excited about, that you wanted to see, you like that director, you like the actors and whatever, and it just kind of let you down a little bit. And I don't want to be too negative here, but I'm just curious if there were
No, no.
any notable letdowns of the year for you.
Henry, what do you think? You got any?
Yeah, in line with the idea that there was a lot of like stuff that was good but not overwhelmingly excellent or like stand out as that particular artist's best work. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, I thought, was very beautiful, but I thought to a fault it had some of like the weakest writing kind of crutches he likes to land on. But I even seeing the making of and understanding that he was trying to emulate kind of like a live action feeling of improvisation, it kind of compensates for that. But as far as underwhelming goes, that has to be one for me. And when I say underwhelming, I don't necessarily mean it's bad. It just probably had the biggest gap between expectation and delivery for what I was going in with.
I would actually kind of agree with you. I went and saw Avatar: The Way of Water last night in IMAX 3D
Ooh.
and was just like so buzzing from that experience. When I got home, I was like, I need something to level me out, so I put on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Yeah, that's an excellent comparison there because Avatar 2 particularly, I enjoyed it more than the first. It really puts to test like how well James Cameron can like endear you to something you don't expect to like. Like he understands the fundamentals of like manipulating drama in a way that's really effective and surprising.
No, that's a good point. And I was going to say I noticed also some kind of surface level comparisons. It may just be their proximity, but just like the way that they expand the world little by little, the way that like big whale type figures are introduced in kind of fake out ways, and just all of this notion of like these, not necessarily young people, but naive or innocent people having this entire world open up to them kind of in storybook fashion. And I would agree with you. I thought Pinocchio was beautiful, but it was just, I don't want to call it perfunctory, but it was one of those things I came away from it feeling like, well, Del Toro is a really talented guy, and this just feels like Del Toro making an animated film. And maybe that's being reductive because he's a very solid filmmaker. But it almost kind of feels a little bit like autopilot for him.
I am. I that's one of the ones that I have not watched yet, so I'm excited to watch that now that I have low expectations.
I have a question.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like we've all kind of missed or haven't fully caught up on all the stuff we wanted to see this year. What's something on your missed list you feel may affect your current list, or what's your
Can
biggest
I?
white whale? Or well, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to answer that question. I want to quickly just jump to the chat because to the last question, things that were underwhelming. Some people threw some stuff out. We had The Menu, Don't Worry, Darling, Lightyear, Macbeth, Top Gun 2, Amsterdam, Thor: Love and Thunder, another Lightyear, another Don't Worry, Darling, and Lightyear, Thor, a bunch of Thor, basically all the Marvel movies. Let's see. Someone said New Matrix, which I guess was last year.
Yeah, that was
Um,
tail end last year.
And then Logical Larynx, and thank you so much, Logical Larynx said, everyone hyped up Banshees of Inisherin for me. It was okay, middling experience. Also, here's $5. Thank you so much. And just before we get to Henry's question, which is a good one, I only asked the initial question so I could give my answer. So I didn't
Yeah,
want
what
to
do you
miss
got?
the chance to do that. I must say, I was very, very disappointed in terms of what I expected by Triangle of Sadness. I know that I've had not arguments, but like good-natured arguments with people about why I didn't like that movie. But I really, really liked his last two movies. Is it Ruben Östlund? I feel like I'm going to say
Yeah.
his name wrong. Or a Norwegian guy or Swedish guy?
Yeah.
Swedish, Norwegian, Swedish, I think.
Not 100% sure.
He's a type of white. He's a cold white. Okay. But I really loved The Square. I really loved Force Majeure. Had high expectations for Triangle of Sadness, and it just didn't work for me. I saw it. I get why people liked it, but yeah, I just felt like that one was a real missed opportunity. So that was probably my biggest letdown of the year.
One for me, I mentioned David Cronenberg before, and I idolize Cronenberg, but
Hmm.
Crimes of the Future was a little bit rough for me. I
Hmm.
think it's maybe even similar to my shared critique of Pinocchio with Henry, that Crimes of the Future just kind of feels like bordering on self-parody in some
Hmm.
moments. Um, like he's got a great imagination. He's doing his thing, but once again, it kind of felt a little bit just like he wasn't really challenging himself, and that was sort of frustrating in a way. Still a good enough movie. I would kind of say the same thing about Argento's new film Dark Glasses. It was just like, although I like Dark Glasses a little bit more, it was just like a really solid, kind of crime giallo thriller, but nothing really new being brought to the table. Still a decent film, but when you watch a movie from one of the greats, you kind of want to see them at least trying some new stuff, or pushing some boundaries, challenging themselves in a way. It didn't really feel like either of them did this year. But
Yeah. To
what do you
circle
got?
back to Henry's question, then I guess I would say things that we haven't seen. I mean, for me, it's like a lot of the foreign films. Like I want to see EO, Hit the Road, The Bear. A lot of not The Bear.
No
The what?
Bears?
No Bears. Yeah, The Bears show about a guy in Chicago. Um, so those are movies that I want to have been able to see. And then let me think. I haven't seen Armageddon Time. I missed that in its limited theatrical window. And obviously, I've yet to see. And all three of these movies seem like they're gonna be pretty bad, but I haven't seen White Noise, The Whale, or Babylon.
Um, I think as far as stuff that I haven't seen this year that may still be able to shake things up, um, The Fablemans, I've heard a lot of good stuff about,
Mhm.
and Steven Spielberg is another one of those guys that I don't know, haven't seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me if I came away from it feeling like, oh yeah, it's just kind of doing a Spielberg thing, kind of.
Yeah.
That maybe seems to be the theme of some of the movies we've discussed so far, or at least from my end. But I've heard a lot of good stuff about The Fablemans, and I think that we take Spielberg for granted a lot of the time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he knocks it out of the park on the
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
is it?
Yeah.
And then what's that, Henry?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really want to see it because I think it's one of those movies that even if it's like, who knows, like middle of the road Spielberg, it's probably still just gonna hit me right in the feels. Um, and then yeah, I mentioned Kelly Reichardt's new film before, Showing Up,
Mhm.
but I think maybe that only played at festivals this year. It's kind of hard to distinguish like what is a 2022 movie, what's a
Yeah.
2023 movie. Because I think that'll probably come out in theaters next year, but I'm really looking forward to that one, as well as there's this horror picture that's kind of been burning up festivals lately called Skinamarink that is apparently uniquely terrifying. So I'm excited to see that one as well.
Oh boy. Okay, so we're at 11:30 Pacific. Let's see in the chat. Someone also wants to see Empire of Light, another one which I'm going to see, but it looks like it's going to be kind of rough. People are mentioning Glass Onion. Yeah, that was out in theaters for a little bit. It's coming out to Netflix on Netflix soon. I'll say it's not that one didn't make my list, but I'll say I liked Glass Onion a lot. I think I liked it better than the
Yeah,
original movie. So watch that on Netflix with your families. And
I think
let's
it
see,
comes
yeah.
out on Netflix tomorrow. Looking
Oh, it's
forward to
tomorrow. Awesome. Tomorrow. So everyone do that. Watch it. Once you're done with Emily in Paris, watch that.
that.
And as always, if you're here, like the chat, or like the stream. Sorry, still have a head cold that I'm struggling with, guys. Like the stream. Keep engaging in the chat. We're liking this. But let's get into the list now. Let's really get cooking. And also, yeah, Patreon, you know about that. And join the channel if you want. Green usernames, emotes. We're gonna get some good emotes for 2023, like throat chair emotes, Harris hole emotes, things of that nature. Let's start. Let's just start. Let's get right into it. Okay, Raymond, I want to start with you. What is your number 10 film of the year?
Well, I'm starting things off with a little bit of a cheat, and I'm going to recommend a double feature for number 10.
Right off the bat, you're not going to wait to start cheating? Oh my god.
Well, both of these movies, they just fit so well together, and they have so much spirit. I didn't really feel right cutting either one of them, but it didn't feel like there was a place for both of them. So I was like, well, I'm just going to put them together at the 10 spot. One that I think folks have probably heard a lot about is Prey on Hulu. This is the latest entry in the Predator franchise. It's about a Native American tribe, and particularly one young woman within that tribe, who are, defending their lives and territory against an invading predator. It's really really fun, great action. The star Amber Midthunder is phenomenal, and she has like real movie star energy. Really can hold the energy of the film even when there's no dialogue or action and things like that. And it was just a blast. I had a great time, and it's one of those movies that Disney acquired when they bought the Fox library, and then they just kind of dumped on Hulu. And it's a shame because it would have been a hell of a time to watch it in theaters with an audience. And there's another movie that came out on Shudder that is a group of teenage girls who are all Inuk, and they live in this small town called Pang in Nunavut. It's called Slashback, and it is also a movie about these four young indigenous women defending their turf against alien invaders, and it's kind of more like an attack the block style approach than something like Prey. It's less action oriented, more character based. The girls kind of hanging out and goofing around, and then just strengthening their resolve to defend their family and friends from these invading aliens who are kind of like body snatchers. The one thing I will say about Slashback is that the movie is almost exclusively cast with first-time actors. All of the actors and the writer-director as well are all from this small village, Pang. And so at times the performances are a little bit dodgy, but like I said before, the movie just has so much spirit, and it's a really, really good time. It's just kind of one of those movies that makes for great like pizza party viewing.
Okay, that sounds fun. I want to check that out. Maybe in 2023 I'll finally get a Shudder account. I've slowly been watching more and more horror movies. I'm working my way up as someone who is able to consume spooky content. So
it's a lot less emphasis on the scares and a lot more emphasis on just like, oh, these weird aliens are chasing us and we're kind of holing up from room to room, and it's a hell of a time. I really enjoyed it.
This isn't on my list, but my movie watching moment of the year was watching X in my house as my wife walked in during the scene where the old people are having sex. And she just looked at me like, "What the fuck are you watching?" And I was like, "No, it's an A24 film, sweetie."
This is for work. I'm cramming for the stream tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, I'll drop my number 10. We're All Going to the World's Fair, a movie that I didn't think I would like. I didn't plan on watching for a while, and a movie that even the description of it made me think I wouldn't like it, and I really really loved it. Speaking of, I guess, horror as a genre, that word has been used to describe this film, and I'm not the biggest genre guy, so maybe I don't understand the full limits and porousness of the term horror, but it didn't really strike me as that, except for maybe like one scene. But I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting small movie about alienation and malaise and feeling disconnected from others, in the way that like mediating those connections via the internet can in some ways fuck us up even more. I found it, kind of weird and fun. And I thought it was nice that it's a movie where I'm pretty sure we only see two people on screen through the course of the entire film. and especially the young actor who plays the lead, I think does a really good job, basically carrying the movie. And as someone who works in YouTube, I got to shout out any movie that features
Yeah.
YouTube videos as a prominent part of it. So yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting movie. I would agree with you. It's kind of tough to pin that one down. I enjoyed it for a lot of the reasons that you did. I think it's a really interesting kind of study of isolation and loneliness
Mhm.
that seems to like unfortunately be kind of a defining characteristic of
Yeah.
almost like younger generations now, and the way that that is mediated through not just the internet but the sort of image that different corners of the internet impose on you in order
Mhm.
to sort of find your people there. But for me, the movie just never really achieved escape velocity. I kept
Yeah.
wanting there to be a little bit more, but I guess there's also something kind of engrossing about that as well, that it never does what you expect it to do.
Yeah, and I do think, and it's annoying to call things more like moods or vibes or whatever. But I watched it at home with all the lights off, and I feel like the soundtrack, especially a lot of the music's made by Alex G, like the Philadelphia-based indie musician, and I think that really added a lot to it as well for me. The overall sort of like vibe and mood of it was pretty cool as well. So, but yeah, but again, a movie that was kind of like a fun pick for me, just because it was a movie that I didn't expect to watch, and I had a shockingly good time watching it. Number 9.
Number 9 for me is Peter Strickland's Flux Gourmet. Have you seen this one, Michael?
I have not. Henry, have you seen this?
I have not.
Okay, if
Um,
you this is Raymond Corner, let's go.
Well, Peter Strickland is this filmmaker who is, I would describe him as something of a sensualist. That like his movies always have this really rich texture and almost like a visceral sound design to them. Even so much so that one of his better known films, Barbarian Sound Studio with Toby
Mhm.
Jones, is literally about sound mixing a movie and like how the nature of what they're doing and the sounds that they're producing start to like haunt the engineers that are producing them. Um, but it's his newest film, Flux Gourmet, is about a sonic collective, or they describe themselves as a culinary sonic collective. So they're people who make weird ambient avant-garde music out of cooking, and they're doing this this like artist in residency program
Mhm.
with a woman who's becoming kind of increasingly controlling of their group, and she's the one who's financing them with the grant, so she thinks she has some kind of creative say in what they do. And so it becomes this kind of not just a power struggle, but also a weird sort of identity struggle within the confines of this institute where they're conducting their residency. Um, and it's a very very funny in a darkly comic way uh, sort of takedown of that kind of corner of the art world, just people who are very much into their own self-image and have kind of almost a narcissistic obsession with what they're creating. um
Oh, wait, it's called Flux Gourmet.
it's called Flux Gourmet, yeah.
Wow, and then
um
we should do this as well. And you did this for your first picks, referencing that they were on Hulu and Shutter. Let me just note that my last pick, we're all going to the World's Fair. At least in the States, is on HBO Max. Is Flux Gourmet watchable anywhere?
yeah, it's a Shutter original, so it's
Oh,
on Shutter
awesome,
as well. I
amazing.
actually, a lot of my movies are going to be on Shutter because as I'm sure a lot of folks know, I'm kind of a horror guy. But
Yeah, you're on
yeah,
brand.
Shutter had a great slate of releases this year, so a few of them will pop up still.
Well, Mr. Shutter, if you're watching, you should sponsor Cinematology if you're not already. Just throw some money at Raymond. He's doing good work for you.
Hey, always happy to take someone's money.
Um, so my number 9, I know this is one we share. Is it higher up for you?
What's your number 9?
Emily the Criminal.
It's a little higher for me, but
All right,
if you want to talk
let's.
about it now.
We should wait, right? Is that the more fun thing to wait till we get to it on your list?
Okay, yeah, we won't have to wait long.
Okay, cool. So we'll I'll pause on my number 9. What's your number 9?
Well,
Oh, you already
Uh,
did it. You already did it.
so my number
We're on 8.
8, I'll tell you what, Emily the Criminal was my number 7, so let's just do my next 2 picks so we can talk about Emily the Criminal now.
Okay, great. So Emily the Criminal, another movie. Again, I think both my 9 and 10 are kind of like movies where I had little familiarity with the filmmaker, had low expectations, and found myself having a shockingly good time. Emily the Criminal stars Aubrey Plaza. It's, to be really reductive, a movie about how student loans can lead you into a life of crime. I've been a long time Aubrey Plaza fan. I think she's a wonderful comedic actor, and this movie is great because she's not funny in it, but she's still great. Um, she puts in an incredible performance, and I think the movie for me, obviously, as someone who has student loans and thinks about this sort of stuff, that was one of the first movies that did a really good job of exploring the kind of various levels of alienation and intensity in like millennial economic life, and especially the way this movie kind of juxtaposes this woman getting into a life of largely nonviolent crime compared to trying to get a legit job in her industry. And I guess I don't want to like spoil it, but at the end of the day, I really like how it shows the shittiness of like the real legal good world. But yeah, I liked it a lot, and I think this has been a big year for Aubrey Plaza, and I think this performance, along with her performance in The White Lotus, have really put me in that camp of people that want Aubrey Plaza to run me over with a truck. So, Raymond, what are your thoughts on this movie?
I thought it was great. It's a movie that kind of snuck up on me.
Mhm.
I too am a pretty big fan of Aubrey Plaza, and I think with a few exceptions, she rarely gets a chance to. Well, I'd say more so now that I think especially too because this movie she actually produced. Um, but for a while there, early in her career, it seemed like a lot of folks didn't really know how to use her other than
Mhm.
her kind of, her Parks and Rec persona.
Yeah.
But increasingly, she's getting these excellent roles between something like this. I haven't seen White Lotus, but I've heard season 2 especially is phenomenal. She was in a really fun movie this year called Spin Me Round.
Mhm.
And a few years ago, she did Ingrid Goes West, which was one of my
That was
favorites of
fun.
that year. And I think she's phenomenal in this. And it was just one of those movies that I hadn't heard anything about. And I had a day off, and I just opened up Fandango, and I was like, I just want to go see a movie. And that one
Yeah.
came up, and I was like, all right, why not? I like Aubrey Plaza. And went in, really, really enjoyed the movie, and it's kind of grown on me ever since. It's a modestly budgeted picture. It's very
Mhm.
much in the indie mode. So it's somewhat inauspicious in its way, but I think that's kind of key to its success. It really is focused on her and her performance, and she carries the thing like a champion. It's
Yeah.
a really, really fun movie, and even more than like digging into the student loans as this sort of animating force for what the decisions that she makes throughout the movie. She also is like she has a felony on her record,
Mhm.
so any
Mhm.
opportunity that she has to work all these gig economy jobs, and any time that she tries to get a better paying job, it's either they turn her away because she has a felony on her record, or the great scene where the lady calls her in and then she finds out during the interview that she's interviewing for an unpaid
Yeah.
internship rather than a proper job, and she has this great scene where she tells the lady off. um
That's
it
scene of the movie for me.
yeah, it's great, and it really does, like, when you step back and look at the thing as a whole, it really is this wonderful indictment of just kind of late capital, and
Yeah.
the positions in which the sort of rat race in which everyone is being dropped and increasingly are given fewer and fewer options.
And I think something you mentioned about how it portrays work and like gig economy work in general. I was thinking about this week in light of the big Vulture piece on nepotism in Hollywood. But I think a lot of times the way work is represented in film and on television shows that some people haven't had like real jobs before. And not that there's anything wrong with people who like move to Hollywood when they're very young and just do, entertainment related jobs as they work their way up, but it shows that people like don't know what it's like. And I think that this movie did a good job of painting economic reality outside of, entertainment jobs in a really fun way. Fun, or I guess dark. And also worth noting, that movie is on Netflix. So if people want to watch that. There's a question that came up in the chat that seems like a good Raymond question. And now I think I lost it. Hold on. I think I can get it back. Where was it? I'm going to end my life if I don't find this. Oh, here it is.
Easy.
So
Please send the
MC
question
says-
in again. We can't lose Michael.
MC said, which reminds me, says, is the director-focused view of Hollywood just another kind of great man of history approach to creativity? Thornback then said, yeah, films are collectivist work and directors get all the credit. And then John E said, and directors don't even do most of the work. LOL. What the fuck? LOL. But I'm curious if you have thoughts on that. The idea of directors maybe getting too much credit for the collective process of making a film.
Sure. I mean, every movie is different. And while I would agree that directors don't do most of the work, directors still do quite a bit of work, but that also may just be my independent director showing. I think that movies are, it's one of the reasons I love them so much. They're a collaborative art form in every sense of the word, not just insofar as it's being an actual collaboration between the cast and the crew. But it's also collaborative in the way that it draws all the art forms in. Movies are not just one thing. They're writing and acting and drama and their composition. There's photography involved. There's dance and stuff like that, and musicals. You have a musical score. Like, movies are the amalgam of all the art forms, so it would be foolish to think that they're the work of one single person who is just somehow a master of all of those things. I think in some ways, speaking from my limited experience, but also the way that a lot of directors talk about their experience on set, I think one of the big jobs that a director is responsible for is just like being able to communicate their vision and hiring the right kind of people who know how to carry that thing off. And I think that's something that's de-emphasized a lot in the way that people do talk about movies, is that like so much of it relies on strong communication. And if you're a terrible communicator, you end up with something that could either come off as like very flat and hollow, or on the other side of things come off as like really chaotic and unfocused. Granted, once again, everybody's different. I've heard a lot of accounts of James Cameron being a total tyrant, but I mean, the guy gets results. So I think maybe directors do get a little bit too much credit, but I'm sure we'll talk about this later. It's kind of similar to perhaps conducting an orchestra.
Yeah, hell yeah, we're gonna talk about that later. Yeah, no, and I've never directed anything in my life. I've been directed before, just in, like independent stuff and comedy shorts. And in my limited experience of being directed, I do think that like a good director, not to be like a sports guy, just reminds me of the best coaches who are able to identify what's going on in a scenario, who does what best, how things work together, and they see 2 steps ahead of everybody else. So I do think there's like a way in which, even if a collective group of people are making a film, if the director is able to get everyone to up their game by 10-15% or whatever, that's still a pretty big deal. So who knows? I think we're on your 8 now.
Yeah, but I swapped Emily the Criminal to 8 so we could talk about it then. But if we want to jump to my 7, what's your 8?
Ooh, and also, Raymond, random thing. If you have your list written up, ping it to me so then I can send it to Henry so then he can slowly put them on screen, even though it ruins the surprise for me.
Okay.
But so my number 8, right? That's what we're doing now. The Johanna Hogg film that came out this year, starring Tilda Swinton, Eternal Daughter. I imagine a lot of you watching this might not fuck with Joanna Hogg. She most recently made The Souvenir and Souvenir 2. Eternal Daughter is one of the best movies I've seen that is a clearly COVID era film. It's shot and fully set at a bed and breakfast in the north of England or the south of Scotland. No, I think in England. and I think we see 4, maybe 5 human beings on screen. Tilda Swinton plays a character named Julie, who is the older version of the character that Joanna Hogg gets into in Souvenir 1 and 2 movies. I highly recommend. And then she also plays that character's mother. So you have like a 50-year-old Tilda Swinton and an 80-year-old Tilda Swinton playing off each other. It's a movie about, I mean, if we're going to be really cheeky, I could say it's a ghost story in which the ghost being explored are memories and traumatic events from our past, and the way in which even positive things and people we love can haunt us in their passing, and how the places we remember being with those people can I guess haunt us. But it's a very quiet film. It's a very simple film. It's 90 minutes in and out. But I think in a year where Tilda Swinton already had a pretty good movie year and has been shooting from the 3-point line with high efficiency the past couple of years, real big just Tilda Swinton stunting in the whole movie. So if you're a Swinton head, you should definitely check it out. But yeah, that's my number 8, Eternal Daughter. Did anyone see that one?
I haven't been able to see it, but this is a movie that almost assuredly would shake up my list if I had been able to watch it beforehand. Because I loved The Souvenir Part 1. I haven't seen Part 2 yet, but I'm also I'm obsessed with ghost stories, so this one is right up my alley. I'm really looking forward to getting around to it.
Yeah, and I'd say for anyone, if you're at all interested or haven't seen your films, if you need something to do over the holidays, Souvenir 1 and 2 and Eternal Daughter, a great trilogy, way better than the most recent Star Wars trilogy. Sorry, I'm just being a prick.
Taking swipes.
Yeah, fuck you, J.J. Abrams. Let's swing to 7 then.
So my 7 is a little movie on Shudder called Watcher,
We're back on Shudder, baby.
Yeah, starring Micah Monroe, who's become something of a scream queen. She was also in a movie this year called Significant Other, that was kind of science fiction infused horror. But she was in It Follows and The Guest. She's a wonderful actor. Another actor that he doesn't really need much to still fill a moment. And this movie takes full advantage of that attribute. She plays the young wife of, I don't 100% know what her husband does for a living, but they've been flown to like the Budapest office of his company because he speaks the language. And so she is kind of just left in their penthouse apartment all day while he goes off to work and business meetings and stuff like that. And one night, while she's kind of just, floating around her apartment, just killing time, she notices that someone across the street, a few stories up, is just watching her.
Mm-mm.
And at first, she doesn't really think much of it because, people look out their windows, whatever. But every single time she goes to the window thereafter, he is always in his window as well. And he's always watching her. And it's just this thing that kind of like starts wheedling its way into her mind. Because in addition to this sort of sketchy guy across the street, there has been a string of serial killings in the area of young women in the middle of the night. And so despite the fact that she doesn't speak the language and that she's kind of a stranger in a strange land, she's also like bored out of her mind and getting really paranoid and afraid and wants to take action. So she starts basically investigating the serial killings happening in the area and trying to put the pieces together, because she just knows somewhere in the back of her mind that it has to be something to do with this guy that will not stop watching her. So it's just a really, really great paranoid thriller. A lot of quiet moments that just kind of rest on her reactions. And another one of those movies that just kind of snuck up on me. Because once again, it's kind of seemingly inauspicious, very, very small scale thriller. But what they do with that simple premise is not only kind of exhilarating, but ends up being pretty profound as well in certain moments.
And then what's the title one more time of that?
It's just called Watcher.
Watcher. Okay, cool. Amazing. That sounds. I feel like it sounds like I could maybe handle it.
Yeah. Similarly, it's not jump scary. I think maybe that's if that's a problem for you. It doesn't. It's not that kind of horror, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of a slow burn.
Awesome. And then definitely it sounds like, again, guys, if you want to be up on that Raymond lifestyle, you got to get Shudder. If anyone's if someone's tuning in now, I saw a couple people ask this. We're doing the best films of 2022. It's me, Raymond Kramer, producer Henry. We're going through top 10s. We're going to talk about some other stuff as well. So if you're here, thanks for being here. That's what we're doing. Make sure to like the stream if you don't think we're idiots. If you do think we're idiots, then get a membership to Wisecrack. And if you fucking hate us, join Patreon. 3 options.
It's the only way to turn the ship around. You have to buy some influence.
So I'll do my number 7, and I'm realizing now the shift from my number 7 to number 6 is I'm impressed by it. But I'm jumping ahead. Okay. My number 7, I didn't mean to do this, but 8 and 7 for me are both movies about mother-daughter relationships. Which is fun, because I've never been a mother or a daughter, but they're great. And that's the movie Petite Maman. I think it's one of my only, it's not one of my only, it's one of the 2, I think, foreign films I have on my list. It's a French film directed by Céline Sciamma. I don't want to say her name wrong, but I probably did. The shortest movie on my list at 1 hour and 12 minutes. And I love a short movie because I pee a lot. So I like to watch a movie where I never have to get up. A kind of quiet movie about an 8-year-old girl who goes with her parents to a house in the countryside of France after her grandmother dies, and via a weird portal in a forest ends up hanging out with another little girl just her age that turns out to be, wait for it, the younger version of her own mother. So it's a cute and fun fantasy that kind of, I don't know, I think gets at that question of like, I don't know if anyone ever thinks this. I'm going to get a little hippie about it now. But I used to have this thought when I was younger, which was, would my dad have liked me if he knew me when I was his age, if that makes sense? So I would think this when I'd be like 15, I'd be like, oh, when my dad was 15, if he knew me when I was 15, would he like me? He probably wouldn't have. He didn't like hippies. But it explores that question of like, what is it like to think of a parent as someone who was once a child and who once dealt with all those same things. So I recommend checking it out. I think it's Huluable, and I think it's on Hulu and it's everywhere else to rent for like $1 or something like that. But Petite Maman is my number 7. Did anyone else see that?
I haven't, but nope. I loved Céline Sciamma's last film, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So it's been high on my watch list, and it's one of those that like I just never got around to press and play. And I wish that I had in advance of this discussion because it probably would have shaken things up a little.
But it's a easy one to watch just because again, 1 hour and 12 minutes. And that won't spoil it. And again, we're not spoiling too hard, but I'll say this, friends, you can't spoil a good movie. You just can't. When I saw Petite Maman, I knew that was kind of the twist, and it didn't really affect it because it's not about the twist. Someone said, are foreign language movies also considered here on the list? I just said one. Petite Maman. It's foreign language, French. Ever heard of it? I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so number 7 on the Raymond side of things. What do we got?
Well, I just did number 7. Okay, so my number 6.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're on your 6? I'm so confused about
No, it's all good. Yeah. Well, we also did a few flips and stuff.
Oh, yeah, we flipped around a bit. Yeah.
My number 6 is a movie called Pleasure. This is a film directed by Nina Teiberg about a young woman who gets in the porn industry, and her entire objective is to become a Spiegler girl. For folks that don't know, Mark Spiegler is kind of like a power agent in porn, and his clientele are largely considered to be like the A-list of porn. So it's just this really fun coming of age movie with, some tense moments as well as she gets into this space of like kind of selling out some of her friends and stepping on a few necks in order to get what she wants over the course of the movie. But one of the reasons that I found it so refreshing is that it's the rare film about porn that isn't judgmental about porn. Most of the supporting cast in the film are all porn stars themselves, and they're all playing basically kind of versions of themselves. And it's just like mostly kind of a hangout movie. There's a lot of relationship drama that sort of animates the plot going forward. But more than anything, it was just like it's a movie with a formula you've seen before, but not in this milieu. So it still felt really fresh and fun. And yeah, I dug it a lot.
Did you catch this one, Henry?
No, but it is on my white whale list as far as things missed this year. I have a lot of horror and foreign stuff. Basically, I still need to make it to.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I think this was one. The reason I don't think I saw it is because it was playing for a very limited amount of time, and I didn't catch it when it was playing. Which I did find. This is a side note about this year at the pictures. A problem I had a lot this year was independent or foreign films would pop up at one of the theaters that I go to regularly for like a week. And then if I didn't see it, it was gone.
Strong agree on that.
And there's even some movies that are higher up on my list that are big movies that are like potentially going to win huge awards that were only at the big theaters for a week or two. And I had to go like drive someplace else to try to see. So I think that's one of the other weird parts about this year at the movies is a lot of theaters in their justifiable struggles to stay alive, played a lot of, screens showing Doctor Strange and Top Gun and other movies that are fun movies. And maybe we didn't have as much theater time for some of those things.
Yeah,
So
a lot of smaller films are getting squeezed out nowadays, but I think a lot of movies too. I mean, when you were asking me about movies that were kind of a disappointment earlier, I would say The Northman perhaps qualifies because even though I really like The Northman, I loved The Witch and The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
So I was going into The Northman thinking it would be one of my best movies of the year. Ended up kind of shaky. But that movie, which, didn't do so hot at the box office, apparently has been doing gangbusters on VOD. So hopefully a lot of these movies can find their audience. And right now, Pleasure's available, not to stream anywhere, at least not that I know of, but you can rent it on any of the usual suspects. And they probably get a bigger portion of that than they would have of ticket sales anyway.
Well, that's great. Yeah. And again, friends, I haven't seen all these movies. If you haven't as well, we're all coming up with our list of what to watch. So I guess we're going to my 6, and I said my 7 to 6 is a big leap. So my 7 was a quiet movie.
I think I know what's coming.
Set in France about a mother and a daughter and children relating to each other. My number 6 is Jackass Forever, a movie about men now in their 40s and 50s doing stuff with their penises and balls, and pranking each other and getting all types of goofy and trapping their friends in rooms with bears and creating torture dungeons and all types of stuff. So Jackass Forever. And I know this sounds like maybe I'm doing a bit, friends, but I'm not doing a bit. I think Jackass Forever was a shockingly good movie. I think the cinematic experience of going to a theater and seeing that movie with other people is maybe the most fun I had at the movies all year. I did get very lucky that the screening I went to opening night, one of the jackasses themselves came out to introduce the film, Chris Pontius, aka Party Boy. But I just think there's a joyfulness about the movie that I think is really wonderful. And especially in this era where so many movies take place now and so many movies that are good and things that we like, are filmed either in a warehouse in Manhattan Beach or in Atlanta against either video screens or blue screens. And so much stuff is done after the fact. Jackass Forever is a movie where people just do dumb shit in the real world with their friends, laughing along the way. All the stunts are real. They really happen. I heard one film critic, I think on his list, Adam Naiman, compared Jackass Forever or tied it with Top Gun Maverick and said for him, Tom Cruise and Johnny Knoxville were in a similar position this year of being old guys who weren't afraid to go for it. But yeah, I Jackass Forever for me, number 6. 40-year-old geek in the chat says skip on that. But yeah, and it's a fun rewatch. And again, I'm a man of a certain age. That age has been said in the chat already. And there's also a huge nostalgia factor for me. Someone who,
Sure.
when I was in high school, the original Jackass movies were coming out, and now as I'm a decrepit old man, they're still doing it. So Jackass Forever. I'm going to assume at least one of you saw this movie.
Absolutely.
Okay. Henry, did
Yeah,
you
what
see it as
about
well?
you, Henry?
I have not.
I'm going to say something that may sound ridiculous, but Jackass Forever is not on my list for the same reason that Avatar: The Way of Water is not on my list. Is like I don't really know how to think of it as a movie so much as like an experience.
I totally get that. I totally get that.
But we've talked about this one a little bit and about the Jackass franchise just in general, and this is going to be another thing that sounds stupid that I'm going to say about Jackass Forever.
Go.
But it's a really unique and I think touching depiction of friendship where like we had a conversation before about how the pranks that they do on each other and themselves are all like really consent based, and that's maybe one of the reasons the franchise has aged so well is it's not coming at anyone's expense that isn't signing up for the ride. But there's this moment that is honestly like one of the most weirdly touching moments in movies for me this year, where who is it that's sitting on top of the gym set with his testicles hanging through to be hit by a power drill?
Yeah. Oh,
and
which one? Yeah.
I think it's Preston.
Yeah.
And at one point he's kind of trying to adjust to get his balls to drop through this hole that they've made so that they can use this power drill to hit his testicles like a speed bag. And one of the guys just kind of steps in and grabs his scrotum for him and kind of pulls it down. He goes, "There you go, buddy." And he just says, "Thanks." And it's just like, that is a moment between friends who are so extraordinarily comfortable with each other as to be like inspiring. Like that's the kind of moment that most movie stars would never let you see them do. And it's like shockingly progressive for a movie that is predicated on like Schadenfreude.
Yes,
but it
most definitely.
I thought it was a beautiful moment. It's literally one of the I think most touching moments, in touching in every sense of the word, most touching moments in 2022 for any movie.
Agreed. And it's on Paramount Plus in the States. I'm sure it's streaming other places as well. And if you want to hear Raymond and me talk about Jackass more, I'm pretty sure it's still up on the Wisecast Show Me the Meaning page. That's when we did it, right? We talked about Jackass. Was it Show Me the Meaning or Culture Binge?
I think it might have been Culture Binge, actually.
Okay, so maybe Culture Binge, but Raymond and I have talked about it before. The Wisecast page has all of those videos from those podcasts. So if that's something you want. I also did a video on the main channel on Jackass Forever. It did really horribly, but I was like, guys, no, you got to let me do this. Okay. So
yeah,
I think
follow your heart, man.
So are we now on your 6 or your 5?
That was your 6. So my number 5.
Yes. Okay.
This is a movie that I'm fairly certain we're going to talk about on your list later. So I'll just throw it out now. Tar. And the one thing I'll say about this is like, you know, Kate. I heard someone on Twitter say something like Kate Blanchett is in Daniel Day-Lewis mode, essentially. That like this is, or there was another person that said in their review that this is like her Raging Bull, and I think it is. It's a towering performance. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it is. You know, it's insane. I mean, she's so good. She's so good at this movie. It's
unreal.
But we'll get to it later.
So then, in a similar vein, my 5 I know is on your list. I don't know where it is. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Where is that? Is that higher up for you?
That's my number 4. So we'll talk about that in just one second. I guess now. Yeah.
I guess. Well, here I'll do my 4 first, and we'll talk about that. Or does it make sense to just do that now? I'll do my 4 quickly, and we'll get to Everything Everywhere All at Once. My number 4, the Charlotte Wells film After Sun. Another. God, I realize I have a lot of films about this is my third film I think on my list that's about my fourth that's about like a parent and a child going through it together. Wait, fourth? Yeah. So After Sun, it's a movie about a father and his 11-year-old daughter, young father, played by Paul Mescal, going on vacation to Turkey. It takes place sometime in the 90s. And it's another film similar to like with Eternal Daughter and Petite Maman about memory and the way in which things happen when we're kids that look one way, but if we have a chance to look back as adults, we see something totally different happening. The film, a lot of it is shown through like VHS footage that is from this vacation that this daughter and father took, and one of the framing devices of the movie is at certain points we realize that we are with the daughter in the present looking back on this as an adult. So it's a very touching film. At times it's a really light and fun film, and it's also devastatingly sad. And I say that not to spoil, just to say if you're someone who's going through it, it might be a rough hang. But also a beautifully shot film. So After Sun is my number 4. Do either of you check that one out?
Henry?
I have not seen After Sun.
No, neither have I, but I keep hearing great things, so it's definitely on the list.
Yeah. I think what we're learning is that Raymond covers all the, progressive horror on Shudder, and I cover any like independent movie that's an hour and a half or less that's really sad about a child and a parent.
Yeah.
So those are our like lanes.
In some ways, you mentioned four of your movies that kind of fit that mold. In some ways, fair stuff too, through this sort of like absence of a parent. I think there's maybe just something in the younger filmmakers.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, you went out for a second, bud.
Oh, I was just saying that as younger filmmakers get opportunities to step behind the camera, I feel like there's this sort of generational ennui that may just be coming through all of a sudden in a lot of movies this year.
Yeah. So let's get into it then. So my number 5, which is your number 4, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I assume that all of us here saw it. I assume almost everyone in the chat saw it. Raymond, take it away. Why is Everything Everywhere All at Once so high up on your list?
Well, there's I could even have put this one higher, like you said. Once we get into the top 4 or 5, it's like it's just kind of throwing them at a wall. This is a movie that it bites off more than most filmmakers would ever have the courage to bite off. And it's able to chew through like 95% of it, which
that was so well put. That was so well put.
It's just kind of a magic trick of a movie. Like it accomplishes so much with such a small budget and in a relatively quick amount of time. I think one of the keys to its success is that despite all of the sort of craziness that they pile on, the movie never really loses sight or loses focus of the core relationship at its heart. That this is ultimately about this family, and more specifically about this mother and daughter who are having kind of a strained relationship. And because they never diverge from that, everything is kind of animated from that wellspring of emotion. They can go to the most insane places and still make it all feel as though it's of a whole. And I think it's kind of a magic trick that a movie can do all the crazy stuff that this does, where people are like having kung fu fights and trying to jam trophies up their butt in 1 minute, and then like the next minute you're crying over like 2 rocks with googly eyes having an impassioned conversation with each other in subtitles.
Who else would have thought crazy. We all would have cried watching rocks on a screen with subtitles, like you said?
So it's one of those things where like I don't know if it was the best movie of the year, my favorite movie of the year, but it's I would say almost certainly the most audacious film of the year, at least narratively. I mean, we can talk about Tom Cruise doing death-defying stunts or whatever, but in terms of just like really following your inspiration and doing something wholly unique, this movie is kind of without equal this year, or almost any year maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely singular. It would have been very easy to make this number 1 for a variety of reasons. The Daniels, 2 younger filmmakers, Daniel Kwan and Scheinert, really just going for it, like getting a little bit of money to make a movie and deciding to hold nothing back. And like you said, just really go for it. I think their last movie was what was it, with the farting dead
Swiss
guy?
Army Man.
Swiss Army Man. Fun movie, but like watching Swiss Army Man, I did not think to myself, oh, when these guys get a little more money, they're just gonna just go for it.
Yeah.
And a movie as well that's made it hard now, not hard, but it's reoriented even the ability for some of us to watch some of like the MCU stuff as the MCU gets into multiverse things. I'm kind of just like, I don't know, Daniels did this better with a much smaller budget in terms of exploring some of this.
On that note, it kind of feels like the MCU, when they are getting into this multiverse stuff, and granted, the last MCU movie I watched was, I think, Spider-Man No Way Home, because that's the last one Wisecrack paid me to watch. But as they have gotten into the multiverse stuff, it has felt like a last resort for them. Whereas Everything Everywhere All at Once, it feels like the beginning of this extraordinary career that these guys are going to have. Like it makes me think what else is going to be cracked open from their brains, as opposed to like, oh, this is them throwing every last idea they have at the wall. I think one thing is clear when you're watching this, that whether their movies are for you or not, like frankly, I didn't like Swiss Army Man at all, but watching this movie makes me feel like, whether or not I like their movies going forward, I can't deny they're doing stuff that no one else is even trying to do.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point. Like the MCU is using the multiverse to almost spread out the stakes and the emotional intensity, whereas this movie uses it to add intensity to the relationship of two people. Hector in the chat said, it was so good on the first viewing. It all clicks together on the second viewing. I'll say that as well. It's a movie that, I mean, my first two thoughts when that movie ended, one was, damn, this was a wisecracky movie. If there ever was a wisecracky movie, was my first thought. And I will say this is an unofficial award. It's definitely the wisecrack movie of the year in terms of being just the wisecrackiest mainstream movie. The second thing I thought was like, oh, I got to see that again. Because I think the first time you see it, there's so much spectacle in the filmmaking and the visuals and the fight sequences and even like the hair and makeup and music that you get caught up in, that when you see it again, you can really focus on the story that's there, and the story holds up and the emotional stakes of that story. And again, my favorite thing, the mother-daughter story, which is my favorite thing of 2022 pictures. So yeah. And I just think too, looking at a lot of the movies from this year, I think this is the one I'll probably end up, maybe besides Jackass Forever, rewatching the most.
Yeah, and I think because it's so rich and so visually dense, it's a movie that probably would reward a rewatch here and there. I'm sure certain things are going to stick out to people on second and third viewings.
Yeah, Henry, were you sold on Everything Everywhere?
Huge fan of it. It's top 5 of the year for me.
Awesome. So let's think. I think that means we're then at Raymond's 3.
My number 3, and this is once again, this feels weird to put in there after something like Everything Everywhere or Tar. But Ty West back on the silver screen with two movies this year. X was a lot of fun, but Pearl is the one that just stole my heart. I have Pearl fever, folks, and I really admire Ty West. I think he's a great filmmaker, and for a long time it seemed like we maybe were never going to get another horror movie from him. Back when he was doing the rounds for his last feature before this year, In a Valley of Violence, this Western he did with Ethan Hawke and John Travolta, he kept saying in interviews that like he was done with horror. He wanted to make his Western, and he was talking up like a kind of rom-com script that he had written. And then for a while he was directing a lot of television and doing really well for himself in that space. And it just kind of seemed like, oh, well, if he was serious about never coming back to horror, and the way the film industry is now, there aren't a lot of folks who get the opportunity to make comedies with a budget if that's what he wanted to move into. I was really worried that we'd never see a movie from him again, and he's back with a vengeance. X is a real fun slasher flick, but Pearl, the prequel to it, follows the main antagonist, the aforementioned old person from X. Horny old person, quite pointedly.
Very horny.
Yeah, it follows her when she's younger, living in this small town, just dreaming of making it big up there on the silver screen, and just yeah, kind of follows her down an increasingly demented path as she grows more and more desperate to break out of the small town life and make a name for herself and not be defined by her relationship either with her family or her husband who's off away at war. Um, and Mia Goth, who stars as in X, she stars as the main character Maxine, and she also stars as the killer Pearl.
So this kind of then overlaps with Eternal Daughter a little bit. Another actor
little bit.
playing
Yeah,
the
yeah,
younger
no,
version of the
absolutely.
person.
She plays a double role in X, and now she's playing the younger version of Pearl. And they've announced that they're going to do a third part of the trilogy where she plays Maxine again, but in the '80s, once she is more firmly established in the porn industry, which she's kind of trying to get her foot in the door in X. So I'm all about it. I love Ty West. I'm so glad that he seems to be like really inspired right now and in a really good creative place. And Mia Goth. You know, we talk about Cate Blanchett being maybe the best performance of the year. Mia Goth gives a performance in this that doesn't necessarily give her a run for her money, but it's a performance that's so big. And in lesser hands, the size of the performance could end up feeling really gimmicky. But I think she tempers it beautifully, and I think, there's it's been talked about a lot, but there's a monologue where the camera's just kind of stuck on her face for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes in one go, and it's just phenomenal. And she completely gives herself over to the material. She's clearly fearless in front of the camera, and as excited as I am to see Ty West directing movies again, I'm really, really excited to see what Mia Goth does after this, because she's really established herself as an actor with total freedom and no inhibition to follow her inspiration. So great movie all around.
Awesome. I agree. Neither of those made my list. They're on my honorable mention things. Hell of a double feature, a theater that I go to regularly, the Alamo Drafthouse in Los Angeles, showed a double feature of those when Pearl came out. And for me, it was a big horror year, which means that I saw 3 to 4 horror films in a theater.
One per quarter.
Yeah, I saw those. Barbarian, maybe another. I don't know. That's great. Henry, did you, as someone who, I think those movies take place in Texas, as our Texas correspondent, did you watch and enjoy X and Pearl?
Yeah, I like them both. Pearl definitely is the better of the two. It's like on an honorable mention space for me as well. It wasn't like a top of the year, but yeah, Mia Goth's acting in it's such a great, just empathetic descent into madness movie. You can really just kind of watch her go. Yeah, it goes down smooth. Loved it.
Hell yeah. A few things, guys. We're getting towards the end of our list here. Thanks for hanging out. Again, this is Wisecrack Live, last episode of 2022, joined by Raymond Creamer and, as always, producer Henry. We're talking about best movies of the year. If you want to hear Raymond talk about movies more, please do subscribe to the Cinemathology podcast on whatever app you use, and then leave a review. Just whatever. And you know what? Raymond doesn't have to say this. Even if you haven't started yet, just leave a review that's like, Raymond's really great. And Austin's, and then say, and Austin's unattractive.
Thanks,
and just
Michael.
really emphasize that Austin is an unattractive guy and that Raymond is the best. So yeah. And also too, once we finish our list, I want to do a little honorable mention chat. I want to hear a little bit more about Henry's favorite movies of the year. We'll talk a little more about what everyone in the chat thought were the best movies of the year. But now I think, is it my 3? Okay, my 3, which I think means that Raymond and I have the same 1 and 2 in different order. If I'm understanding this correctly now, maybe.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. So my 3, I don't think you had this one on your list. Banshees of Inisherin?
I do not. That would be an honorable mention for me.
Yeah. Let me start with this. The movie that made me the most mad and hateful and angry in the last few years was 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Martin McDonagh's last film. I think it's one of the worst movies that's ever been made at that scale. One of the worst movies that's ever been nominated for an Academy Award. I hated basically everything about that movie. That said, I really liked In Bruges. McDonough's plays are pretty impeccable. So when Banshees was announced, initially I was just like, fuck Martin McDonagh. I want nothing to do with him after what he did to me with 3 Billboards. But then it was like, but Brendan Gleeson's in it. And Colin Farrell. And we're in Ireland in 1923, and like
The boys
everything
are
about
back in
this movie.
town. Yeah.
And I very quickly went from like Martin McDonagh, I hate you, to just like kind of like let's fucking go. This is a movie that when it first came out, I was like busy, so I missed it at my normal theater. So I actually just saw it a week or two ago at one of like the 3 theaters that was still playing it. Very much liked it. Now this one was even a little gory for me, because if you've seen the trailer, you know that a guy ends up cutting some fingers off, guys. This is not a spoiler. But I think the simplicity of what is being explored in the film was great. And this is not to spoil anything, but it's basically one of the things the film explores is it better to spend your life creating things that might outlive you, pouring yourself into your art or your work, or is it better to spend your time at the pub with some good crack, enjoying a pint with the lads, listening to some tunes and telling jokes? And I think that, at least in one interview I heard, McDonagh described himself as sometimes caught between those two things, like as an artist who, and to speak of directors, McDonagh has a pretty good reputation for being like a good guy to make movies with, and a kind and kind of fun person on set or whatever. And I think that question really resonates in thinking about what should we be doing with our time on Earth, and kind of the secondary question as well of what happens when friendships outgrow themselves. Because again, if you saw the trailer, the fundamental tension in the movie is one guy doesn't want to be friends with another guy anymore. That's it. That's our conflict, kids. But I think that's also an interesting question to explore, the way in which friendships can sometimes have lifespans, and what it's like when those things happen. And I think the movie does take place against the backdrop of the Irish Civil War. I was happy when I realized that wasn't much of a thing. That at least in my read of the film, it's not like a metaphor for the Irish Civil War. It's not trying to make some big political point, at least as I saw it. And also too, like, great performance in that movie. I think Carrie Condon, who I haven't really seen much before, phenomenal. I thought her performance was so good in this. Barry Keoghan, who's always a little freak in the best way possible, he does his little freak thing in this movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You guys have thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit as well. I think the reason it maybe didn't make my list is just like, as much as I liked In Bruges, I think everything else on my list just felt a little bit more tailored toward me.
Yeah.
And as much as I liked this film, it still kind of felt a little bit like it was in the shadow of In Bruges, where like I think that movie so deftly balances its subject matter with humor. And this one, while I appreciate sort of what it's about and what it's trying to accomplish, it's still one of those movies where it's kind of like frustrating. Sometimes in a good way, in a way that I find is intentional, but you do just sit there and you're just like, man, just talk to the guy. Like,
Yeah.
Why can't you just like, it doesn't make you laugh. It kind of like works you into a knot a little bit more than something like In Bruges does, which I think is what he's trying to do, to his credit, but it's not a movie that leaves me with like a song in my heart, whatever that's worth.
No, it's kind of like the opposite of In Bruges in a sense, structurally, in which Banshee starts. The first act is like kind of funny at various points, but then like at a certain point, it's not funny anymore. And if you're waiting for that tension to be released, you're not getting it, and you walk out of the theater kind of like, oh fuck, well I guess that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, but really a beautiful meditation on like not just the notion of do I spend my time on Earth trying to outlive myself, or go down around the pub or whatever, but just like how we position ourselves in the world and the energy that we put out there. And it really does create this, I think, kind of false dichotomy, this notion of like, I have to choose between being a really good friend to people and being a productive bastard. And that is like sort of the tragedy of the film, is that he feels as though in order to accomplish anything, he has to do it in solitude and has to be alone. And I think there's a sort of like masculine conditioning to that, or a generational conditioning as well, that they can't really escape that binary, which is a really fascinating thing to meditate on. But at the end of the day, like I said, it just granted, it probably did this on purpose, but it did leave me a little cold.
Yeah, for sure. Also great dog and pony performance. If you want a movie that features both a good dog and a good pony prominently, this is a movie for you. And
any folks who are maybe especially excited about seeing a movie with a pony, I would be careful without spoiling.
You're a dog person, don't worry about it.
A dog makes it out just fine.
About that movie, Caspi in the chat says false dichotomy because you can't create decent art without experiencing life. That's a great point. Allie Cattail says, I'm finally here. Can you start over? Just kidding. I'll rewatch later. Happy holidays. And then Penny said, so Banshees and Jackass, same message? Yeah. And Tony Lee said, morning guys, love cinematoology.
Hey,
ever heard of it, guys?
So
heard of it? Wait, so I think our top two might be the same. I'll say have you done your 3 yet?
I have done my 3.
Okay, what's your 2?
My 2 is Nope.
Oh, okay. I'm glad that one of us has this on the list.
Yeah.
So talk to us about Nope. This is the one the whole time we've been doing this to let everyone know. I've been wondering so Raymond, just so everyone knows, he saw my list. I have not seen his.
Oh yeah.
So the suspense on my end is I've wondered, is one of us going to have Nope? Is one of us going to have Nope on the list? People are going to be mad if someone doesn't. And I didn't, and we can talk about why I didn't, but I want to hear why you did. Talk about Nope.
Nope is high up for me. I think this is perhaps Jordan Peele's best film. And that's not to say anything negative about his first 2 pictures. I think Get Out is a wonderful film. And I think Us, in some ways, even though I think Us is a little less tight on the screenplay side of things, I think as a director, his growth between Get Out and Us, and now between Us and Nope, is like practically steroidal. I'm really, really excited to see whatever he does next. But in terms of this movie, it's not only brimming with a love for movies, but just a love for these characters. Like I really love movies with characters that you can tell are not only having a good time on set doing their thing, but you can always feel when, I think at least, you can feel when a filmmaker is judging their characters or not. And it's never a good time when they come to something with judgment. I bring that up to say that this film's the complete opposite. Like these characters are imbued with so much warmth and so much life that even when the movie almost kind of gets away from Peele a little bit in certain spaces, like I do think that there are, maybe a few turns that this plot takes that are maybe a touch convenient. At the end of the day, it's still animated by who these people are on a fundamental level, and what they mean to each other, and the lengths that they're willing to go, not only to save each other's lives, but to create something beautiful. And I think that is like maybe the best place that any art can come from, is just wanting to share something that you love with the world. And this movie just feels like that to a T. It's Jordan Peele taking all of his loves, his whether it's for westerns or anime or early cinema, or just these actors, some of whom he's worked with before, and just kind of like wrapping it up in a tidy little bow, and just it really is a gift to movie lovers in general. And I don't know what else there is to say about it, because it's one of those things that it's such a big movie with so many ideas that we could easily have a long conversation about it. We did an episode on cinematoology about the film, and we had a great conversation there. But I think if you're a fan of Spielberg, this is a movie that starts off as Jaws and then becomes Close Encounters, or kind of vice versa in a way. And it's anchored by 3 of the best performances of the year in Keke Palmer, Daniel Kaluuya, and Stephen Yeun. So that's the long and the short of it. But like I said, I could go on a little bit longer, but I'm curious what you thought, because it seems like you liked this film, but it didn't quite make the cut for you.
I mean, it almost makes me think of how you described walking out of Banshees and feeling a little cold. That's kind of how I felt in Nope. In the first act, I was very much all in to the characters, to the world. As some of the mysteries revealed a little bit, and these questions about our obsession with spectacle are posed, was very, very much into that. But I just don't know. In my mind, I don't know how much Peele brought the threads together. And a thing I often think of with Peele, and I think it's fair to do because he was, trained in sketch and improv comedy in Chicago. And there's a type of, improv style, which I hate to bring up improv because it ruins all credibility, but called the Herald. And basically that form of improv, for anyone who doesn't know this, is where you start off with kind of 3 different scenes with 3 completely disparate themes. And by the end of this improv show, all of those themes somehow get weaved together in a cohesive way. And I think this structure gets used in a lot of comedy. Most Seinfeld episodes have this sort of thing. And I think a lot of people that come from that improvisational background, you see this in their work. And a movie like Nope for me, and I think, Us was like this a little bit as well. I didn't feel it all coming together. And not to say that every movie should come together in a real clean way and say, like, this is what I think, this is what you should feel. But I felt like I feel like the movie could have landed on like a posing of a question that you walk out feeling. And I didn't quite get that. I will say in the movie's defense, or maybe in my non-defense, I only saw it the once. And I need to watch it again. Because I've heard a few people say to me that it really clicked for them on second viewing. So
yeah, I was able to see this one twice. The rare film this year that I got to watch twice. I think the only other movie that I saw twice in theaters was Everything Everywhere All at Once. But I see what you're saying, and I think that this movie does kind of leave a few threads dangling. I kind of alluded to that earlier, that like sometimes these things get away from him a little bit. But I think he does a really good job of laying out the breadcrumbs in this film and trusting the audience to sort of tie those threads together for themselves and have those discussions about the movie and not feel like he has to spoon feed everything.
Yeah.
And I think that can become a big problem if it starts feeling like going forward in his career that he's making a habit of that, and maybe he doesn't even know the answers, is reluctant to give them because he wants to sort of goose that kind of discussion in a way that is sort of like, there's earned ambiguity and then sometimes there's cheap ambiguity. But I think so far in his career, he's earned my benefit of the doubt. We'll see going forward if his movies are a lot more shaggy from here, it might be one of those things of like, oh, he's kind of maybe running out of steam. But I think Get Out is such a tight script. And even if Us is a little too tidy at the end of it, frankly, I think when that movie goes from being a fantasy into a science fiction film where like they start explaining all the answers is kind of where it loses steam for me. But to his credit, both of those movies are mostly watertight. They don't leave a whole lot of threads dangling. I think he's kind of earned the right to put some of those big questions out there in a movie like this, especially that itself is concerned and its characters are concerned with these big existential questions. We'll see as he makes his 4th and 5th movie if that kind of becomes a bad habit of his. But for now, like I said, he's kind of earned the benefit of the doubt from me.
Yeah. So I think if I have this correctly, I think your 4 or 5 is my 1 and my 2 is your 1.
I think your 2 is my...
Yes.
Your 2 is my 1, yeah.
So let's then... Okay, so since that one is a 2 and 1, let's do that last. Let's now get to my number 1, which was your, 4 or 5?
This was my number 5. We're talking
5.
Tar.
Talking Tar, baby. This is a...
Avatar, The Way of Water.
No, this is a movie about a real person who existed named Lydia Tarr. No, so this is Todd Field's film featuring Cate Blanchett giving a magisterial performance as a conductor who gets caught up in some very, I guess we could say, contemporary problems. It's a sort of Me Too-ish movie without being a Me Too movie.
Yeah, gestures toward that a little bit.
Yeah. It's a movie about genius or the creation of genius. It's a movie about
Or perhaps
holding
the
on
mythology of genius.
the mythology of genius. And it's about the length some people will go to either be adjacent to that genius, to hold on to that, to create that, to recreate it. It's visually stunning. It's every part of the film is gorgeous. Her performance is just unreal. Like if I'm ever a parent, I just hope that I can stand up for my daughter the way that Tar stands up for Petra when she proudly
by threatening a small child.
yes,
Okay.
by saying I will get you. So yeah, I don't know. It's a movie that I thought maybe my favorite ending of a film of the year.
It's like a 3-hour setup to a punchline almost. Like it is almost like a torturously long joke, but it's so worth it.
Yeah,
that ending was an absolute gut punch.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just loved it, and it's a movie. I think I walked out of the theater and was like, "Now that's a picture. That is cinema, baby. That's it." So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
I thought this was an excellent film. In addition to everything you mentioned before, I had said this earlier in the show that I'm obsessed with ghost stories. Ghost stories are like my first and greatest love ever since I was a kid. And this is a movie that has like touches of that, but less so in the haunted house or ghost story vernacular, but just with this notion of like time basically collapsing by the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as a conductor, the entire movie is sort of playing with time and composition, and it visualizes that in perhaps her head, perhaps not. But there are a lot of scenes and individual shots where like the person or people who are kind of haunting her her guilty conscience are just kind of like tucked away in the back of the frame without drawing any attention to them, and like they're just hiding in corners of the house where no one should be. And I don't necessarily think of this movie as a ghost story in a strict sense, but I do love that it plays with some of that vernacular and treats ghosts as this sort of manifestation of our guilt. And in a lot of movies you mentioned before, ghost stories play with trauma in that way, but in this one it's kind of unique in that it's much more about the way that she not only sees the world, but the way that she sees herself as being a part of that world and kind of that world's main character for a lot of the time.
Yeah, Henry, did you dig Tar?
Yeah, I loved Tar. Going off of like Raymond talking about the haunting thematics, as a film structurally, it conveyed really well just like the kind of ideas she was constantly trying to push out of mind as like a paranoid tyrant, kind of trying to be in control of everything. And so, yeah, the ramping sense of frustration, also talking about the cancel culture thematics of it, is like the movie always has this fear or this terror that Tar has of being found out, but I love kind of like the punchline at the end, because it's like once what she's doing is found out, yeah, she falls from a certain social grace, but she still goes on. I love the way like even the ghosts the movie makes paranoid end up not being as big as Tar imagines them to be.
Yeah, the ego is the first thing to die. I will say I do have, I think, this is a small little nitpick. As I've said, I really love this movie, but I think the reason it's not higher for me is that my one little quibble with it is that I don't believe for 1 second the social set that is responsible for making Lydia Tarr a success would ever care about these allegations. That's the one.
I can see that.
That's the one thing for me is like, this is a movie where Alec Baldwin literally plays himself. Like these are the people who are still defending like Woody Allen and Polanski.
Yeah,
there's no world. Yeah, there's no world in which in which the NPR set kicks Lydia Tarr to the curb. That said, I recognize that like the movie is the movie, and I think you could also make the argument that like all of the people I just mentioned are men, and she maybe does not have the same kind of grace extended to her because of entrenched misogyny and what have you. And there are certainly a lot of people who would be waiting to see her fall from grace. But there is no world in which the sort of, I think what would be steering the conversation in the events of the film would be people going like, well, the dust will settle on all that, but we can't take Mahler's fifth from her. We have to at least let her finish this cycle, and then she'll go on about her way. Like, I just imagine that being the conversation. And in a way, there was a part of me that felt like perhaps a more honest ending, although I do love the film and ending, perhaps a more honest ending would be her getting to conduct Mahler's fifth and, seeing what that does to her emotionally with the weight of the first 3 hours of the film bearing down on her. That said, it's a small nitpick. It's still an extraordinary film, but I could not shake that feeling after watching it.
And yeah, real quick, like the stream. Not a lot of likes today, but I think it's because we're not bugging you to like it a lot. So like the stream if you haven't already.
Please like us.
Yeah, please like us. Algorithms, guys. Algorithms, they're real. Okay, so let's just do this then. We got your number one, which is my number two, which could have easily been my number one. A lot of back and forth here.
Sure.
So I'll let you take the lead on this one. Decision to Leave.
This is a movie I watched literally, I finished minutes before jumping on the mic. So I will say this kind of feels a little bit cheap because I'm sure on a rewatch, any one of these movies might, in the top 3 or 4 or 5, could jostle up to that front spot. But Park Chan-wook is one of my favorite filmmakers ever. And this is a movie that was so high up on my watch list. I had already put it as my number one spot on this list to prepare for this show before I had even watched it, because I was like,
amazing.
Well, it's kind of on him to prove me wrong, and he's never done me dirty. And yeah, as I was wrapping it up, I was just like, I mean, this movie has been really hyped for me. I had heard so much about this being not necessarily a return to form, because I think The Handmaiden was a great film, but just him doing this sort of exercise in precision and in technique. And every aspect of this movie is that. It's just so precise. It's so clean. It's so perfect from a technical standpoint that I was kind of just left with the script after watching it and thinking like, okay, is this a better or more exhilarating story than any of the movies we've talked about today? And I think what I love so much about this one is the kind of structural magic trick that it plays, that for folks who haven't seen it, I won't spoil anything, but it's a crime story. It's a mystery, kind of a whodunit. And about an hour into a 2-hour, 20-minute movie, the mystery is solved. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, oh no, are they about to completely run out of gas? And then the movie just starts mutating beyond the mystery into the emotional and personal impact that the true answer to that crime has on the people, not only who perpetrated it, but the specific person who was investigating it. And then it just keeps on twisting that one knife for basically another movie's worth of time, and just keeps on like building on itself and just like digging the knife deeper and deeper and deeper until the notions of like optimism and regret are all just rolled into one ball of like, the guy doesn't even know what the fuck he wants anymore. And it's just like everyone is acting in service of so many contradictory things, but there's an emotional clarity that serves as a through line to all of those contradictions. And I just think that is like, it's a miracle. It's a miracle of a screenplay. And it's so rich in emotional nuance, especially for a movie that, through its technical precision, may come off as kind of cold on a first watch. I'm certain that I'll like it more and more. Watch it again, and already I'll watch it again just talking about it, because it's the rare film that can do this chilly technical formalist approach, but still give you this rich, nuanced exploration of humanity all in one go. And I just think it's miraculous.
Lovely description. I think it was either in an interview or in a little thing they played at the theater before this movie played. Park Chan-wook said something like he wanted to see if he could make like a noir crime film and a rom-com at the same time. And I think that's what I liked so much about the movie, that at different points, like it's these two genres kind of happening on top of each other. And at certain moments in the film, it's like very cute. There's like a long scene on the one where they kind of go exploring and they have like rain jackets or whatever. There's a scene where you see some characters kind of like fall in love and get close. There's other scenes that are about solving really messy crimes. There's involvement of the underworld. I don't know. There's so much was happening. I liked it all so much. Visually, it's just stunning, if not perfect. And then the performance of, I think the actor's name is Tang Wei, who plays the female lead of the movie, just phenomenal. Like one of the best performances of the year. And it's always so stunning to have such a great performance from someone who I had never seen before. So
I would recommend Lust Caution, the Ang Lee film with Tony Leung. She stars in that as well, and that is one of the most exquisite films I've ever seen. And then she also did a movie a couple years ago called Long Day's Journey into Night, directed by Bi Gan. That is the movie is all shot in one continuous take. So it's kind of a formal exercise. It's experimental dimension, but kind of similar to this. There's a very clear emotional through line that they're trying to communicate that just shines right through all of that formalism.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that, that's our collective highest ranked film of the year. Henry, did you catch Decision to Leave?
I hesitated watching it this morning because I didn't want it to throw into just complete disorder my entire conception of movies for the year.
That's fair. So there's the top 10s. Let's talk about a few things. Someone did say, interesting that Triangle of Sadness isn't on either of these lists. Wasteland Blue says that at the beginning of the stream, I talked a little bit about how that was a underwhelming one for me. Henry, what did we miss that are some of your favorite movies of the year?
Actually, I have a quick thought on Triangle of Sadness, but yeah, I also do have my favorites. Can I go ahead with Triangle?
Yeah.
I think one of the things, because it was working on me in the theater, but the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. I think one of the issues I had with Triangle is it tries to have this ambiguous question-raising ending, but the tone of the movie overall is so pointedly cynical and sarcastic that it doesn't leave room to really think about anything for me.
Yeah. I you're not going to get any feedback from me there. I kind of agree.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. But I quite liked Force Majeure, but I haven't seen the Square or Triangle of Sadness yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, as far as favorites go this year, I'll just do a quick top 5 because so much of this was already covered in y'all's two's list. Adult Swim presents Yule Log, the Casper Kelly.
I still haven't seen this.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, man. Go on.
I enjoyed it a lot. It has a very similar premise to Barbarian, which was also good this year. I think both movies are fun explorations of just suppressed rage and the hidden domestic violence history in America. It has a lot of that kind of fun thematic stuff going. I just really love the ingenuity of it. Casper Kelly made it on the budget of a live-action Adult Swim show, and he was able to do it without much oversight because he kept it cheap. So... the filmmaker in me likes that. Of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Banshees of Inisherin, and Tar are also my top 5. The favorite movie I had this year was Rise, Roar, Revolt, the Indian action epic.
This is on my short list, baby.
Yeah, it's in a year where there was a lot of just maximalist action and blatant, metaphor in movies as far as the populist form of storytelling being back, if not so much the intellectual side. This movie is just a better James Cameron movie than the James Cameron movie I saw this year. It's an extremely expensive, elaborate production. It's got singing, it's got dancing. In a year where, isolation and social loneliness is being talked about, it asks the question, what if dudes became bros? Yeah, it was a fun ride, and it is the 2022 kind of like mood movie for me.
Awesome. And I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people in the chat were annoyed that we had not talked about RRR yet. Or
That was
R.
one of the last movies that I cut before locking in my list. But that movie was an absolute blast, and it's kind of insane when a 3-hour flick flies by in what feels like 45 minutes. That movie just never stops.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been a fun adventure, a fun journey together. I now have some things on my list, well, from Raymond's list that I want to watch. Some stuff in the chat was really good. They gave me new stuff to watch. Someone said no comments on Babylon. We just haven't seen it yet. I think
I haven't seen it yet.
I don't think it's come out even. Or
Same.
If it did, it came out today.
I think it comes out like pre-screenings today. Comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely see it soon.
Yeah, but there's some stuff, friends. We're doing our end of the year list. There's still some stuff that's going to come out in the next couple days that we didn't get to talk about. So sorry, but thank you for hanging out for that. Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you'll come back at some point.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I would love to. This was a blast.
Yeah, and then definitely, Raymond, I'll ping you about this too. Send over your list again, because I'll make sure I make him look pretty and post him on the Wisecrack Twitter so people can see our list. Maximilian brought up Crimes of the Future. If you rewind, you'll hear Raymond talk about that. So definitely, as always,
liked it, didn't love it. Yeah.
So if you're catching this late, as always, we're gonna put the VOD up. You can go back and check the whole thing out. Producer Henry, as always, thank you so much for both making the ship sail while also providing great commentary along the way. It means a lot. And I think we're gonna wrap up here, and I'll tell you why, guys. I haven't felt good for the past few days. I still don't feel very good. And I think I'm hitting my limit. I think I'm hitting my limit of this much talking and thinking. Wasteland Blues did say that RRR stands for Raymond, Raymond, Raymond.
Ah, hell yeah. That sounds like a really great movie.
Yeah. So on that note, and everyone, thanks again. So we're taking next week off of Wisecrack Live. We'll be back in the new year. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out this year on the stream. Thank you so much, Producer Henry, for making it happen. And if you can do one thing before you leave, go subscribe to the Cinemathology podcast, where you can listen to Raymond and some other guy talk about movies. They're very good at talking about them. I enjoy it very much when I listen, and I think you'll enjoy it too.
And Michael, you've been on the show as well. We talked about your non-favorite movie of the year, Top Gun Maverick. And
Yes.
then I think we're looking forward to having you back on a couple weeks from now to talk about some Scorsese.
Would love it. And I'll just say this again. The thing I'm most proud of is that neither of us had Top Gun Maverick on our top 10 list. I'm going to say something really spicy before we go. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous that serious film critics are saying it's the best movie of the year.
I've seen your one-man crusade on Twitter against Top Gun Maverick.
No, but I like it. It's a fun movie. I had so much fun in the theater.
Strong agree.
But that people are like putting this on a list above like movies like Tar, Decision to Leave, and Everything Ever All at Once. I'm like, grow the fuck up.
I don't think it even made my like top 20, honestly.
It's just a different thing. It's a different thing.
This kind of comes back to what I said about Avatar, where I was like, I don't know how to evaluate this thing as a piece of art, but it's definitely entertaining. Another one I would say is Ambulance. Ambulance is easily the most fun I've had in theaters all year long. It's such a blast. Watch Ambulance, but I can't put it up against Park Chan-wook.
Oh, it'd be ridiculous. So we ended on a spicy note, and thank you for the nice wishes in the chat. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks again. This has been the last Wisecrack Live of 2022. Signing off. We'll see you next year.
Happy holidays.
Thanks for hanging, y'all.